Well, welcome back. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Grun Thap in Thailand, Bangkok, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're about to start now, session 2, entitled Building Resilience to Vulnerabilities, Shocks, and Stress. This session has 3 rapporteurs. Dr. Uchuk Duangbutsi is assistant professor and also associate chair of Foreign Affairs and Information for the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at the Faculty of Economics here at Gasetsad University. Another rapporteur is Dr. Jiarong Gitchatai Run, is assistant professor and head of the Department of Agriculture, Economy, and Development at the Faculty of Agriculture in Chiang Mai University. And the third rapporteur is Dr. Palagon Satsu. They are a lecturer in the Faculty of Economics of the Department of Agriculture, Economics, and Engagement, Faculty of Economics at Prince of Songkhla University. The chair of this session is Dr. Suresh Chandra Babu. You met before. Is a senior research fellow and head of capacity strengthening at the International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. He is also extraordinary professor at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. He is an international agricultural economist who has conducted many research projects, policy research projects, in capacity development and policy advisory activities for more than 30 years, particularly in Africa and in Asia. I'll leave it now in the capable hands of Dr. Suresh.
Thank you, Dr. Matthew. Let me welcome all the participants and the presenters to this session. This is a bit long session. We have 6 presenters who will be presenting. So let's dive right in. The session is on building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress, which is becoming a very topical issue, particularly for policymaking, given the climate change, given the conflict, given the shocks that is happening due to conflict in many countries, the repercussions of, say, for example, Ukraine war. Dr. Shengen Fan talked about it this morning, and also natural disasters that are happening because of the climate change. And we also saw the pandemic type of shocks from COVID-19, and we are still going through that and the implications of that for the food system's resilience, and how do we address them in the context of vulnerabilities that we face. So in order to start that presentation, set of presentations, we have already introduced the rapporteurs, and I'm sure they are taking notes. Let me go to the first, because of the time, go to the first presentation that is on economic impacts of COVID-19 lockdown measures on livestock production in Thailand. That will be presented by Dr. Ayarwadi Premastira and her team, and she is assistant professor of agricultural and resource economics at the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics in Gasetsad University. Shall we go to the presentation now?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Suresh, for introducing this topic. It is my honor to have the opportunity to present in this webinar and to be the first one in this section. Very exciting. Okay, let me start by the topic. This topic particularly related to the impact and response of the farmers to the situation of COVID-19 lockdown measure from the government to their productions in Thailand. The issue actually originated from the cooperative between the DLD or Department of Livestock Development and RF-ETPV program with our staff from KU. Actually, this is the research and training course for DLD veterinary officer, and the cover of the study, the data is from the late of 2019 until 2020, and after that, this is the period of the workshop, and is done by last year. We have 30 participants or trainees, which all of them are veterinarian officer from DLD. Okay. In my presentation, I have divided into 4 main parts. We will begin with the introductions that come from the data or the situation that happened in that time period. When we look up the statistic data between before and after of the Thailand declared the emergencies, the state of emergencies, we found that the livestock price index tend to decline over that time period. Over that time of COVID-19 lockdown measure applied, at the same direction as the livestock production index also. Okay. This consistently with the study of the FAO in 2020, they found that the impact of COVID-19 on livestock sector have both sides, as on the demand side that reduce the consumer purchasing power and reduce on demand and public procurement. And how about the supply side? We found that the livestock productions have some limited access to animal feed and other inputs and some services from veterinaries also. So this come to the objective of our study. The first one is we want to measure and compare the cost and return on farm. What the cost change, the productivity and yields of the production change or not. And the second one is we want to study the impact and adaptive approach of farmer on the farm management, productions, farm size, and the treatments. In this research training course, we apply the concept of cost return analysis for veterinarian officers and the concept of value chain analysis to interview the farmer and to collect the data. We collect the data in mainly 4 regions of Thailand. In the North region, we collect and interview dairy farmer, about 90 farms from 3 provinces, Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, and Lamphun. And we collect the swine farms, around 300 farms from central regions, northeast and south, separately allow more than 10 provinces, and we use the proportional sampling by farm size, small, medium, and large farm. Let me go to the result. From the results of dairy farmers, we found that the overall cost of dairy farmer, more than 50% composed of which are feed costs. The results showed comparing between cost before and after the lockdown measure applied. We found the feed cost increased almost 3% because of the shortage of the instant feed for dairy farms, and the labor cost also increased around 0.4% because of the foreigner labor came back to their homes and go back. The other operating costs increase like equipment and other supply that used to higher level of farm safety in that period of time or in when the situation of COVID-19 spread. But the veterinary medicine and supply costs reduced when we compare these costs. The reason is because the lower of veterinarian service in the farm during that period of time. From the increase in the feed cost or the shortage of feed cost in local area that make the average total cost of the dairy farm production increased around 4.18%. And the dairy productions reduced or the milk yields reduced because of the formula or the feed formula change, and the price of milk in the market reduced also because of the in situation of COVID-19. It has the surplus milk because of school shutdown, restaurant, and some supermarket lower their demand. That made it or affects the dairy farm to get lower of profits almost 20% comparing before the COVID-19 period. This make the BC ratio lower around 4.36%. And we look to the adjustment or the change or management in farm. We use the value chain concept to compare these two periods. And we found that the main factor that impact the cost of dairy farm is because of the restrictions on transportations and time that the farmer on transportation can transport in dairy or to inbound logistic of their feed or the healthcare replacement and fish also because of the limit of transportation. Another one is on the marketing and sale. We found that because of the surplus of milk in the market, that cost farmers have to process their milk product with the cooperative, and farmers have to buy their product back from the cooperative and find his channel to sell their product in the market. This is like the situation that had to farmer in that time of period. How about the swine farm? In the swine farm, feed cost also cover more than around 50% in the total cost of productions, and they have breeding costs around almost 40%. The situation of COVID-19 lockdown measure make all variable costs increase in the same direction, especially the breeding costs because of the movement and restrictions and shortage of breeding in that period. And the same as the labor cost because of the foreign labor shortage also. But on the other hand, the veterinary medicine and supply cost comparing to the dairy farm in the swine farm is increased because they need more or higher use of medicine and veterinary supply. And other operating costs also increase because of the equipment that have to higher use for increase the biosecurity on farm. Increase in variable cost in swine farm make some farm lower their productions or lower of the fattenings number of pig is decreased around 6.2% in the productions, and the fattening farm had to be extended. So the weight of pig when they sell into the market increased a little bit, 0.4%. The total average cost, overall cost, increased on average around 3% because of the breeding cost that higher and it had more ratio than the other costs. The total revenue in that time period, because of the higher demand, not only in local market, but from the foreign market, they have a higher demand on pork product. So that means the price of pork in that period is increased around 6.6% between 3 months in that time. So these benefit are positive for swine farmer. This reason made the gross profit of swine farmer increase almost 30%. This is different from the dairy farm. The swine farm that look trend to have a positive profit and gross margin on their farms, so that make the BC ratio increase in the same direction. The impact that adjust the management in swine farm is also the limited and restriction on transportation also, because they have to adjust the transportation farm of input and feed and breeding, and increase the stock of inputs in their farm. The farmer have to extend the fattening farm, and maybe in some farm they have to adjust feed type because they cannot find the regular formula in local area. And some farm have to change the sales channel to the local customer in the more ratio to the local customer. Okay, this is the impact and adjustment of swine farmer. This also the farmer have to adapt by acquiring more additional information and news from various media to protect the biosecurity on their farms in this situation. When these evidence or the report of this project, and I wonder that how about the effects after that period, because this is a study on 2020, and when we continue to the livestock production index, we found that the production index trend to decrease over time until now. That means the production of farms of livestock, which is swine, chicken, and cattle, tend to adjust their production in his farm over time until now. But in a different way, the livestock price index tend to increase over time because of the increase in the demand in the market and from the foreign market also. So this regarding all of this information that we study above on economics impact, we can conclude that the COVID-19 lockdown measure has a negative impact on the revenue and profit of dairy farm. But in the contrast way, it positively impact on the profit of swine farms during the COVID-19 lockdown period, because of the swine farm have some benefit from the higher demand increase from the market that make the price of pork increase. How about the adjustment of farmer? We can see that livestock farmer increase the disease security system on farm to protect the effects of COVID-19 and follow the measure of the government. They adjust feeding and input management. Some farms have to stop feeding and have a new plan on transportation, something like that. Another one is farmer adjust production capacity and productivity over the time, and we can see from the information during until this period. And especially on dairy farm, they have to search for a new sales channel and markets to distribute their product by themselves. Okay, this is the change and adjustment when the Thailand declared the state of emergency of COVID-19. This brings us to the challenge, two questions. The first one, what are the policy and measures to ensure the livestock production supply function normally from this current situation and maybe in the next future period? And what the measure that could be taken from experience and lesson that we learn from these situations to protect or to smooth it in the future if we have this crisis. So the policy recommendations and we might call for action regarding these two main challenge question above. Recommendation in 4 parts. The first one, because of during the crisis, we found that the transportations and the feeding, like the input feeding, has the most impacted from COVID-19 crisis. So for dairy productions, we recommend government should help dairy cooperative and other institutions could train farmer in feed mixing practice and support.
You have 1 minute to finish, Dr. Ayurvedi. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I almost done. Okay, to mixing practice and use the feed in their farm. And for swine productions, government should promote the local corporations on feeds and supplement to secure the production instead of transport from the other province. The second is to maintain the production capacity of farmers. For dairy farms, government can provide or should provide a grant to increase the extra milk or supply of milk to with longer shelf life and distribute that to especially children. For swine farm, maybe government should provide a guideline or knowledge on disease control and prevention to strengthen up biosecurity on farm. To ensure distribution and transportation, maybe government should reallocate resources to facilitate more on the food transportation, especially the fresh food, like allow special permit or establish e-marketing in local area or local market. And the last is to stabilize liquidity on farm. This might help to the farmer have more liquidity by providing emergency loan, direct compensation more, and extension of loan. Okay. Finally, I would like to highlight the key issue is these recommended actions should be taken to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 to livestock sector, which is the key contributor to the food security system of people. And that is complete of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ayerwadi. It was wonderful, correctly presented in the timely manner, and also very good insights from the livestock production industry, particularly Thailand. And we learned quite a bit on the specific aspects of how production is affected, costs are affected, and what are the policies and the programmatic activities that we can introduce to protect the farmers from this kind of shocks. So it's a very appropriate presentation, also very useful in the context of COVID-19 when it is affected by the supply side constraints in terms of inputs, and also the supply chains are affected. Labor mobility is affected due to lockdown, and you have brought down various sets of issues in the livestock context. Thank you so much for that. And I encourage all the participants to kind of throw their questions and comments on the Q&A session. And there is a question about, if may want to answer it quickly, but we can also come back to that a little bit later. Think about this. There is a comprehensive presentation. Feed cost was very high. That is one of the analysis results that you talked about. Could imported feed fix this kind of problem? Please think about it and let us know what you're thinking. With that, we can go to the next. You want to answer that right now quickly while waiting for other questions to come in? Why don't you go ahead and can imported feed fix the problem? Then we'll come back to other questions that may come up.
It depends on you. So you want me to answer your question right now?
Yeah. Please go ahead. They're asking, because of the cost return analysis showing the feed cost is very high, can we import the feed? Can it fix the problem?
Okay, because of in some farm, they have to transport a long distance transport to buy and stock the feed from other province, and maybe they cannot transport in that period of time, or the restriction of transportation. So farmer adjust their sale by mixing in his farm, mixing their formula in his farm, but it's not like quite good or the correct formula that fit for their livestock. So the recommendation that we propose is to we should provide more knowledge to farmer to have the skill of mixing. And another one is like to promote the local distributor or local feed to secure the sale channel or the feed stock, so they not much to travel too long to other province to buy stock, feed stock.
Okay, thank you. A quick follow-up question from another colleague. How can Thai government intervene to control the input price during COVID and after COVID? Do you think we should intervene and control? The government should control the input price? What is your thinking on that, Dr. Ayerwadi?
I agree. But I'm not sure that the government done it or not, but maybe in some place they control the price, but because of the shortage of the input or the feed price in some area. So this is like when the agent that sell the feedstock might have to include the transportation cost into the feed price.
Okay. Yeah, quick follow-up question. What about the capacity of the farmers or the local authorities' capacity to deal with the livestock diseases during this time? For example, endemic diseases that make livestock face, but then because of the lockdown, because of the mobility of the farmers and local authorities, was that the issue? And did you see any major issue of livestock disease not being controlled or the capacity being less due to COVID?
Capacity in the production chains. Actually, for swine farm, it might have the other factor that affect them, but in the dairy farmer is almost the same, but they have to reduce the productivity because of the yield or the feeding formula that affect them. But I'm not sure in the long run what factor that will cause the decreasing in the productions or the size of do I answer your question?
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. We'll come back to you more and we'll follow it up. Okay, thank you so much for the nice presentation. Let's move on to the second presentation of this session. That is going to be by Professor Yoshihisa Godo. And Professor Godo is with the Department of Economics at Meiji Gakuin University in Japan. And he is going to be presenting on the food sufficiency at a time of pandemic and the case of small state survival of Singapore. So it's again, like we saw this morning, there is a wide range of countries in Southeast Asia, and we are now looking at a city-state Singapore and the context of food self-sufficiency in Singapore. Professor Yoshihisa, please take over from here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Yoshihisa Godo of Meiji Gakuin University in Tokyo. My research partner is Lin Tae. He is Singaporean, but he is busy today. So I will present our paper. So the title of our paper is Food Sufficiency at the Time of a Pandemic. You know, Singapore is a very small country and urbanized country. So anytime people are very conscious about the food problem. You know, looking at Singapore's history, they had many problems with neighboring countries. So it is natural to be very sensitive. People can be very sensitive to food problem. Okay, so time is limited. So this is my strategy. My conclusion comes first. So 3 points. One is COVID-19 pandemic did not endanger the food security in Singapore. So at first, people had some emotional response to COVID-19 pandemic, but in fact, it didn't affect a lot to food problem in Singapore. And the second point is still COVID-19 had some impacts on Singapore. So One is from the beginning or even before COVID-19 pandemic, Singapore government and Singapore companies are very interested in promoting high-tech agriculture. So they invest a lot in research, scientific research, and they built many plants for high-tech agriculture. So this movement was strengthened because of COVID-19 pandemic. This is a second point. And third point, so, you know, usually, triangle of growing economy. So Singapore is growing and now one of the most developed, most wealthy country in the world. So Singapore is growing. This benefit not only Singapore, but also neighboring regions in Malaysia and Indonesia. So Johor and Ria. So we call it Sijori. So the COVID-19 pandemic proved the benefits of Sijori. So now, in particular, in food problem, in food industry, Sijori is growing. They have more communication for better food industry. So this is the essence of my presentation today. Okay. As I told you, at first, Singaporean showed very emotional response. You know, according to Singaporean government, Singapore Food Agency, SFA, they estimate that food sufficiency in Singapore is less than 10%. At first, Singapore looked well in controlling COVID-19 pandemic. But after January 23rd, COVID-19 exploded in Singapore. So finally, April 7, they had a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is a kind of lockdown. So then Singaporeans are very anxious about the food problem. In Singapore, they cannot have self-sufficiency. Farmland is a very tiny part of Singapore. So people are very afraid of food shortage. So they rush to supermarket and the grocery store and had extra food in their homes. But the Singapore government was very calm. So they said that it's okay. So please don't rush to supermarket. Please don't have extra food. So looking at what happened, the Singaporean government was correct. So let's look at the statistics. Okay, so this is a statistics of food export and food import. You know, Singapore have many re-export. So it is interesting. Food export and food import are almost the same in terms of money. Singapore US dollar. Okay, so this is a non-food export and non-food import. So between 19 and 20, non-food export and non-food import declined. This is because in manufacturing sector, we have a very close relationship. So if we want to export something, we need to import some ingredients from other countries. But in 1990, there were so many factories shut down in Thailand or Malaysia. So as a result, both export and import of manufactured commodity declined. So, but looking at food in the previous sheet, there was no big difference between 19 and 20. So it shows that food balance was not so seriously affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. So from now on, let's look at the items of food. So how they change between 19 and 20. So this is beef. So beef import also slightly increased, and the price is also slightly increased. But this is not because of COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe this reflects the shortage of crop. So in 2020, demand supply condition of international crop, it was shortage in crop supply. So this is why beef price increase are real. So this is chicken. In the case of chicken, price slightly go down and import keep growing. So this is pork. Pork import also grow between 19 and 20, and the price increase a little. This is same as beef. So this is fish. So fish import also grow and the price go down. So this is vegetable. Vegetable also increase and the price also slightly increase. So this is egg. Import also grow. So as I told you, even before COVID-19 pandemic, Singaporean government was very supportive for R&D for high-tech farming. So in Kranji area in Singapore, they have many high-tech agriculture, like hydroponics, aquaponics, and rooftop farming, etc. So under COVID-19 pandemic, this movement was escalated. So more foreign companies like Sanam Bio, Ankeshu Shara, Panasonic, Crop One, these companies are more aggressive in investing R&D in Singapore for high-tech farming. So Shijori started as a free trade zone in 1990, and in 2001, Shijori extended to agriculture sector. So during COVID-19 pandemic, Singapore imported a lot from Johor and Riyadh. So Singaporeans appreciate their food supply. Simultaneously, Johor farmers and Riyadh farmers also benefited by selling their commodities to Singapore. So COVID-19 pandemic proved the mutual benefit of Shijori. So now, Singaporean government, Malaysian government, and Indonesian government, they are more supportive to promote agricultural connection in Sijori. Okay, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful, very nice and simple, precise presentation, Professor Yoshihisa. Let us see if there are any questions. I have one question when people are typing in their questions, Professor.
Yeah.
You saw some commodities imports have increased and the prices have also increased.
Yeah.
But some commodities imports have increased, but the prices have gone down. How do we explain? How do we explain that? I was hoping that you would give some kind of explanation.
Yeah. Most important point is crop. In particular, corn and feed. In 2020, crop demand in China explode because of I'd say structural change of pork industry in China. So China started importing a lot of corn and feed. So as a result, feeding crop price went up in 2020. So as a result, beef and pork, they rely on a lot for imported American corn and American feed. So as a result, pork and beef, their price increased. So this is not related to COVID-19 problem. So generally, demand supply condition in food is, I'd say, very stable these years. So this is fine. In addition, in the case of Singapore dollar is appreciating. So this is why food price is not did not go up in 2020. So this is my understanding.
Okay. There is a note that I see. Let me see what it says. COVID-19 accelerated the use of digital technologies in agriculture sector through online platforms.
Yeah.
Digital payments, digital advisory applications. What technologies other than hydroponic vertical farms you talked about, Professor, do you think played an important role in Singaporean context? Maybe we can learn from other technologies such as digital platforms and digital applications. Could you say anything about it?
I'd say, in R&D, it takes time to come some result. So I'd say it is impossible to develop some new technology only 1 year. I'd say people, government and Singaporean people, they are more aware of supporting R&D for high-tech industry. And I know there are many trials, many challenges for promoting high-tech farming, not only in Singapore, but I would say Singapore is very aggressive because they are very conscious about the food problem. And, Singapore is very supportive for R&D itself. And Singapore is a very good country for observing intellectual property. So Singapore, even compared with other countries, Singapore is now more and more supportive to high-tech farming. But we should be more patient for waiting how our R&D produce result.
Right. So you also talked about the benefits that Singapore can bring in by working with Indonesia and Malaysia.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a regional kind of cooperation and partnership there. And can you say something more about it? Is because of this COVID, as the Indonesian and Malaysian farmers are sending more producers to Singapore? Did you study that from the Malaysian and Indonesian perspective, or just its data that you collected from Singapore?
I don't have a particular figure now, but there are some anecdotal evidence.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, in history, Singapore had some political problem with Malaysia and Indonesia. I don't like to say too much about this, but
Okay.
I would say COVID-19 pandemic, they supported with each other. So both Singaporeans and people in Malaysia and Indonesia, Riau and Johor, were benefited. So I would say this is a very good lesson.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, this is very useful. Thank you so much for the presentation, and it brings a new perspective about how a urban-oriented state and a nation can handle the situation. Singapore is a very good case study for also vertical farming, investments in R&D towards urban farming. So we have to follow up and learn more as Singapore develops its food security strategies. With that, let us thank Professor Yoshihisa for his nice presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you, Chairmanship, and thank you.
If you
support of
hold on a
organizer.
second, hold on a second. There is a question that that probably came up. I'm going to check if there is any question. Okay, not for you, but for the presenter one, we will take that up later. Professor, thank you from Japan joining us, and wonderful presentation. And we are moving to the next presentation by Dr. Vitsanu Atavanach, Associate Professor in the Department of Economics, Kesasat University, and he will be presenting about the impact of COVID-19 situation on Thai agricultural households and the role of agricultural digitalization. And that's related to the question that was asked for the Singapore paper, how much digitalization can help in this kind of COVID situation. So let's go to Professor Vitsanu right away. Professor Vitsanu, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suresh Babu. And also good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my presentation, I would like to say thank you very much for all organizers for having me here. It is an honor to participate in this international seminar. So the title of my presentation is The Impact of COVID-19 Situation on Thai Agricultural Households and the Role of Agricultural Digitalization. And I would like to say this study also has financial support from UNFAO and also Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives. Okay, let's start with the introduction. Many of you know Thailand is a developing country that agriculture plays a crucial role. And statistically, agriculture employs around 12.6 million laborers, accounting for around 34% of total labor force. It contributes only 8.55% of the gross domestic product last year. And around 80% of Thai agricultural households are smallholders. These statistics imply that farmers are poorer than laborers in other economic sectors. And we know the fundamental information of agricultural sector. Now we move on to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since 2 years ago, COVID-19 posed serious threat to agricultural households, especially the smallholders. And according to the study, we found several problems that smallholder face. For example, they are facing with oversupply problem, higher transportation costs, and also long shipping time, something like that. And in terms of the adoption of digital technology, the literature investigate the potential gain of this adoption and found several interesting findings. For example, if you adopt the technological adoption, in this case, it can improve farm productivity, on-farm and off-farm income. And this digital technology can lower the risk and the cost of production also. And in terms of the impact of COVID-19, there are also have studies investigate the impact of COVID-19. However, if we observe around the literature, there's no study that investigate the effect of digital farm application adoptions on farm household in Thailand. And also, there's no study that investigate the effect of digital farm applications adoption before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see, right, there are several questions remain unanswered. And the first, for example, what were factors determining the adoption of digital farm application? Did the adopting of digital farm application improve income of farm household? And also the third question, did adopting digital farm application mitigate the negative effect of COVID-19 pandemic? Last but not least, did the adoption of digital farm application affect income of farm household differently among, for example, small, medium, and large size farm growing paddy, non-paddy field crop, or livestock, and aging versus non-aging farm? And according to these questions, it comes to the objective of this study. There are mainly three objectives. The first one, this study is want to investigate the effect of digital farm applications adoption on income of farm household. And the second one, we want to explore the impact of digital farm applications adoption on income of farm household before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. And the third objective, we want to explore the heterogeneous impacts of digital farm adoptions on income of farm household across subgroups of farm. And here is the scope of the study. When we focus on the term adoption of farm digital application, we have several purposes that farm digital application can do. Right? The first one, it can be used for checking the weather forecast, land use planning, right? Production guide, soil analysis, insect and disease monitoring, water management to fulfill the demand of crop, checking factor prices, checking product prices, searching for store selling inputs, searching for buyers, buying crop insurance, and also it can be used for registering, right, with the government transfer payment during the COVID-19. These are all the objectives that we post on the use of farm digital application in this case. Now we move on to the analytical framework to quantify the effect of adoption of digital farm technology to the farm household income. We mainly use the propensity score matching techniques to address the possible selection bias in econometric, as we all know, right, due to the volatile nature of the farmers who adopt digital farm application. And the estimator that we use for the analysis, we call average treatment effect on the treat, or ATT. And you all know in the PSM, we have two main assumptions, unconfidentness and the weak overlaps. So we want to make sure that these two assumptions are satisfied. And the data that we use for this study, they are from several sources. The main source that we use is the household survey. We use the telephone interview, and we got the contact information of the farmers from Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives. We did the survey 2 rounds. The first round 2 years ago in June 2020, and the last year from June to October. And we also draw the climate data, temperature and precipitation from Thailand Meteorological Department, and also combine with the GIS information from several sources like National Statistical Office, Ministry of Interior, and also Google Earth in this case. And these are the sample households that we conduct the survey using the telephone. The left-hand side, in 2020, right, we have 930 sample households. And on the right-hand side, we have more time, we collect 2,000 and roughly around 500 sample households. And here is the variables that we use in the model. The first one, let's start with the potential outcome that we want to measure. Basically, we want to measure the effect of digital application adoptions, right, on total incomes before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. And we also measure the change in total income, the change in farm income, and also the change in non-farm income. We basically split the farm income. We basically split the total income into farm and non-farm income. For the control variable that we include in this study, we basically capture operator characteristics, farm characteristics, and also location characteristics. For example, operator characteristics, we include sex, the age, right? Single, level of education, the field of the study of the list of the respondents, speaker, member of agricultural institution, for example, whether the household received the transfer payment from the government, something like that. For the farm characteristic, we include like the total activities in the farm, size of farm, right? Whether the farm grow field crop, horticulture, livestock, fishery, and in or out of irrigated area, whether they report the lack of labor. And for the location characteristic, we basically include all climate data and also include the regional effect in the econometric model. And this is the descriptive statistic in the 2 years ago, right? The first round of the survey. You can think of this as the first wave of the COVID-19 during that time. And you can see from here, right? This is the outcome. And this is the full sample. Let's start with the full sample. We compare, right? The income of household before and after COVID-19. So you can see from here, right? The income of farm household reduced, right, due to the COVID-19 in this case. And if we observe the treatment before the COVID-19 and treatment after the COVID-19, this is mean adoption of digital farm technology, right? In this case, there are roughly around 27% of farm adopt digital farm application. And later on, we have 30% roughly around that. This is we include the application that used to register for the government transfer payment, something like that. And if we also break down, right, the farm into adopting, right, farm and non-adopting farm, right? And here the second column here we exclude the government application. We just want to focus on farm application. Right? And for the third column here we also include, right, the government application that used for the transfer payment also. So basically, if you observe around here, we can see that before and after COVID-19, the farmers are adversely affected by COVID-19. And if we compare between adopt and non-adopting farm, right, basically, right, adopting farm have higher income compared to the non-adopting farm. However, right, you can see from here, because of the selection bias, we cannot just compare the mean between the two groups, right? Because it has the selection bias that we have to address first. And this is the descriptive statistic for the second round of the survey during June to October last year. Now you can see from here the percent of adopting digital farm application increased from 20%, right, up to 44%. That means COVID-19, right, increased the use of digital farm application. And if we observe here, if we break down, right, the total income into subgroups, we have total, right, and we have small, medium, large, until non-aging farm. We break down into subgroups, and we compare the subgroup between adopting and non-adopting farm. So basically, you can see from here, right, the first column of adopting farm and the first column of non-adopting farm compare the mean. Right? We basically found that adopting farm have higher income compared to the non-adopting farm. But still, we cannot conclude, right, about the difference between this will be the impact of digital farm application adoption. We have to address the selection bias first. Now let's move on to the descriptive statistics. At the national level, we observe already. Now we move on to the provincial level. The left-hand side here show you the provincial level of adopting the digital farm application. And on the right-hand side, show you the statistic about the use of farmer. Farmer use the digital farm application for what purpose? Mainly, we observe that farmer use only 1 up to 3 purposes for farm application. As you all remember, right, we have roughly around 11 purposes that we can use for digital farm application. But now they still have limited use of digital farm. At the national level, on average, around just only 2.5 purposes per farm household. Now let's move on to the empirical results that we post on the first step by estimate propensity score. So basically, we want to observe factors that determine the decision to adopt digital farm application, something like that. And here we capture the size of farm, full farm size, right? Small size of farm, mid size, and large farm, right? And here is a control variable that we capture in this case. So mainly we can find that right? Higher level of education, graduated from agricultural field, and be a speaker, right? Being the member of farmer institution. Farmer have higher number of farm activities, growing horticulture, right? Located in the irrigated area, and also have a variety of weather. This farmer can adopt, right? Will adopt more digital farm application. And if we break down, right, the subgroup now to paddy, non-paddy, right, livestock, aging and non-aging, so we can see right, heterogeneous factors that determine the decision to adopt digital farm application here. Due to time limitation, I cannot explain the detail for each model in this case. Right? So now, after we have a propensity score right, for each farm, right, that's separate for each subgroup. So now we try to perform the matching. In the matching with propensity score, we have several algorithms. In this case, we use nearest neighbor matching, 1-to-1 matching, NN1. NN5 meaning we have a 1-to-5 matching, 1-to-10 matching. We use a kernel matching and also radius with 0.01. Sorry, and you can see from here the first line right show you the average treatment effect or the treat or ATT, and in the parentheses here show you the standard error capture from the estimation. And we have the estimator like a total income right before COVID-19, after COVID-19, right, and the change in total income, change in farm income and non-farm income. So basically, you can see from here there is the star right here shows statistical significance. So basically, we can conclude that before the emerging of COVID-19, right, adoption of digital application increased household total annual income roughly around 5,000, right, and 500 to 6,000 and almost 200, more than the case of not adopting digital farm application. And for the after COVID-19 still, right, statistical significance can be observed. So emerging of COVID-19 still, right, adopting digital farm application still increase the household total annual income roughly around 2,000 to 3,000 US dollar per year. And you can see we can find no statistical significance right, for the change in all type of income. This may be implied that this adoption of digital farm application can protect to some extent the reduction of income for farm who adopt digital farm application. And now if we use the second set of data during the last year, right, that capture second to the fourth wave of COVID-19, you can see from here that across the all size of farm, we found the statistical significance. So that means adoption of digital farm application can improve the farm income. And also for the non-paddy farm, right, we found statistical significance in all matching algorithms. And for the non-aging farm also, you can observe from here for aging farm, right, we found no statistical significance. So meaning that right now the old farm adopt digital farm application, but still cannot improve the farm income of the aging farm, something like that. And we also perform the matching quality, we have to check, right, and perform the robustness check using the sensitivity analysis from the Rosenblum. So we generally found that the quality of matching from our study have done pretty well. And also we should have the robust results in this case. And last but not least, I would like to end with the policy recommendation. According to the statistics and the findings, you all see, right, that adoption of digital farm application provide a huge opportunity for income, right, for the farm household. However, if you observe the real data, you can see that adoption of farm applications still low, both quality and quantity. And so the policymaker should rapidly promote the access and adoption of digital farm application in several ways. For example, the first one is recommend to promote the integration of land plots among farmers, especially smallholders. It's recommended to promote the integration of farmers in the form of farmers institution, and also promote the rental market for digital technology and modern machines. We should promote more digital literacies to the remaining smallholders with the collaboration from educational institutions. You can imagine right now, right? Just only the staff of MOAC is not enough. We have to speed up the knowledge, and the educational institution is very important. And we should categorize the smallholders into 3 groups, right, for extension in this case, like high potential, right, moderate potential, and low potential farmers. And we should upskill, reskill extension of government officers, right, with the support from the private sector and also educational institutions. Last but not least, in the last slide, we also have to promote the lifelong learning platform to facilitate the learning of smallholders. We have to find a way to reduce the cost of adopting digital farm application, including monetary costs and also learning costs of the farmer. We should provide a set of incentives to incentivize the young smart who graduating the field related to agriculture to move to the farming sector. We should promote diversification of farming and design the right incentives to resolve household behavioral bias and other pain points in technological adoption. And last but not least, we should establish digital infrastructure to enhance the adoption of digital application, such as implementing the inclusive cellular signal and also expanding the inclusive internet to rural areas. And that's all my presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, perfect timing, Dr. Bitsanu. Wonderful presentation. It is a very hot topic, given that how digitalization can help not only in COVID kind of situation, but also even in the regular agricultural development process. How we can use digital technology to increase farmers' income, to make them better access to markets, both input markets as well as output markets, also to aggregate the farmers through farmers associations or farmer-based organizations. Digital technologies are going to be fundamental. There is one question that is coming up in the chat in terms of how the digitalization is helping farmers to rent the machineries better. Is there any example of how this has been useful for farmers to collectively rent the machinery? And is there some examples that you can give to start with? Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Recently, if you know, right now we have like an application that encourage the sharing economy. If the farmer want to use, right, the rental machine, right, they can just send the order, and then we have some type of application that get together the farmers and the service provider. In that case, I think it can obtain the economy of scale for the service provider, and in this case it can lower the cost of rental machine. But you know, in Thailand we have that kind of platform, but still they cannot have in all areas. We have just only in some areas. So we should promote more in terms of the access to this platform. And my experience in Thailand, like some of the area cannot access to any type of machine right now. Yep.
Very good, Vishanu. One more question that is coming up quickly for you is, could you elaborate a little bit on the channels or the roles the digitalization plays in increasing income? The numbers you showed are really impressive, that adopters of digital technology are able to increase their income quite a bit, and both under COVID and regular times. Could we tell us the pathways through which it is happening? Is it because of the cost reduction? Is it because of yield increase through some kind of new information they get, or price information, reducing the price asymmetry in the market? Where is this income coming from? Could you give us some light on that?
I think about the first thing is about reducing the risk at first, right? Checking the weather. If farmer can access just checking the weather, I think it's very, very important. If they want to provide fertilizer, right, to their farm, and if they do nothing, right, and it's raining, right, so all gone, right. So now, if they can check the weather, you can see right? They can provide the fertilizer in the right time and with no rainfall. So this is the way that can reduce the cost of the farmer also, and with the way that the farmer can use for the watering, right, the plant, and we have soil analysis. It's kind of more precision farming. In this case, the farmer can reduce the cost of production, and I think this is the pathway that can improve the income of the farmer. And also you can see in my this is digital technology can link to the use of modern machine. One of my PhD students also found that if you adopt modern machine, it can improve the yield of the rice also. And this is maybe the linkage between digital farm application and the modern farm technology in this case. And right now we talk about smart farming and smart farmer. Right? I mean to promote more digital farm application here. I think the smart farmers is the key point. Don't focus much on smart farming if you want to provide the knowledge to the smallholders. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we need to move on because of the time. I would ask the participants who are asking questions to put that questions in the question and answer window, because that way the panelists can actually type the answers back to you. Could you do that, please? Because of the time, I'm not going to go through. Excellent questions are coming for you, Dr. Vishanu, because the paper is excellent. So questions are also coming very nicely. Please do that. If time permits, we'll come back and take some more questions for Dr. Vishanu. But I'm going to move on to the next presentation in the interest of time. And the next presentation is talking about adoption of smart farming in central Thailand. Case study in rice, pineapple, and cassava. This is by Thanapon Atipan Yakul and our colleagues. Thanapon is assistant professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at the Kasasat University. Dr. Thanapon, please take over from here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank my department to give me a chance to give the presentation in this conference. I think you already know my name from the schedule of the program. My presentation is part of a research project entitled Mechanism Design for the Central Region Agricultural Driving Toward Thailand Modern Agriculture. I just cut only some part to present in this conference about the adoption of smart farming in central part of Thailand. Let me start by giving you the agenda of my presentation. Then move on to the background of the study. There is saying agriculture is the backbone of the country of Thailand. It serves as a source of food security, and it's also an important sector for the development of biocircular economies. But in the past, three economics models were used to develop the agricultural sector. There were Thailand 1.0, Thailand 2.0, and 3.0. But until today, the government used Thailand 4.0 model to pull the country out from the middle income trap. As the 20-year agriculture and cooperative strategy is aimed at introducing agricultural innovation in order to improve the productivity, farming efficiency, and increase farmer incomes. Since 2014, the Department of Agricultural Extension has turned 1,066,900 farmers into smart farmers, create 18,143 smart farmer models, and 462 smart farmer groups. And also the Department of Agricultural Extension has carried out 43 projects and plan to develop 188 farmers by 2025. However, the information regarding the barrier of the adoption of smart farming technology in Thailand is scarce. Therefore, this study would like to investigate factors affecting the adoption of smart farming technologies in Thailand, and to identify mechanisms to enable farmers in the central region to adopt smart farming technologies. For the data collection, we collect the data in the crop year 2019-2020, and we select Sukhanburi province as the study as the case study of paddy rice production, and also Kanchanaburi province as the study a case study of cassava production, and Prachuap Khiri Khan province and Ratchaburi province as the case study of pineapple. Our population is are the farmers who participate and non-participate in the cluster farm group. And we also in-depth interviews private sector and also government agency. For the analytical framework, as we know that the adoption of the innovation is a quite complex issue. So we concern several factors in our study, but we focus more on the human resource management. We try to measure the managerial style of the farmer and risk attitude of the farmer. We also concern about farmer knowledge, farmer experience, and entrepreneurial skills of the farmer. However, we also include another factors, for example, demographic of the farmer, such as age, education of the farmer, and also farm resource endowment. We also observe that whether the technology have the relevance or have some advantage for the farmer. Moreover, we also look at the farmer network, whether they have the different network in the area, and also the norm. But last but not least, we also look at the facilitating conditions. For example, government or local extension office in the area, and also look at the private sector that include in the cluster farm, and also the climate condition, because we expect that these factors may affect the adoption of the smart farming technology. For the data analysis, we we use the content analysis with the quantitative approach. For the content analysis, we classify the farmer into 4 classes or 4 groups. There were low adoption farmers, moderate adoption farms, high adoption, and very high adoption. We use the the difference between the level of the adoption are the number of technologies that farmer adopt. And also we use also quantitative approach to test the different factors that affect in different level of the adoption. We use the count regression model or Poisson regression model for each case study. I mean for rice, for cassava, and also for pineapple. We also use the order probit model, and we expected that maybe in different technologies may have a different factor that affect the adoption of the farmer. Therefore, we also use a probit regression model. That means that we have a 12 model for each case. And this one is the initial result of the study of our project. And the top of this figure is a case study of paddy rice. This one is like the conventional practice or conventional technology that farmers use in Thailand 3.0 models. Here this, for example, and then we look at each technology or each practice according to paddy rice production process here. For example, we look at the seed variety that they use and what they do in the land preparation and soil improvement, and also planting, and also fertilizing, plant protection and watering. And also we also ask about the what practice that they use for harvesting and also for the post-harvest. We will see the conventional practice, they also burn the rice field after harvesting. For the definition of smart farming that we use in our study, that include precision agriculture, big data, and also the farm application that include in Internet of Things. Also, in the case of cassava, we use the same concept, but we will see only some different practice that they use in cassava, because it's a different plant. Like for the sensor for water level, or that will not use in cassava production. Also, in the case of pineapple, we also look at the conventional practice and also the new technology. So this is the result, the initial result of our study. We look at the perception and adoption in case of life. I cannot show you for the all technology that we observe, because actually we have 49 practice in because when we observe for the whole process of the rice production and cassava production or pineapple production, they use a lot of technology. But I select technology and show you only technology that match with the definition of smart farming. For example, for the precision practice like soil analysis and fertilizer that they use based on soil analysis practice, that we call made to order fertilizer in Thailand. Here, this is the yellow one is farmer. They said they don't know that they have such practice, and some they know but they don't adopt. The green one showed the percentage of farmer that they know and they adopt. If we observe the initial result here, we will see that even farmer they know soil analysis practice, and they use soil analysis practice, but the rate of adoption in fertilizer usage based on soil analysis practice is lower than the rate of adoption of soil analysis, because the problem is because of when the farmers send the soil to the local office, I mean the extension agency in the local area, farmer have to wait for a long time for the result. That means they cannot wait for the result of the soil analysis. So they have to use the conventional one. And the second point, if you observe the land laser leveling, for the adoption of the land laser leveling is still low because it's the farmer, they don't understand and they don't want to participate in the extension program because they said it's the technology, they don't understand what they will get from the participation in the extension program. And if we compare between three cluster farm here, we have 2 points that we get from the result here. Like the first one is I already said about soil and soil analysis practice. But the second point is you will see in Dambang cluster group, they adopt more for the land laser leveling compared to those 2 cluster group. It's because in the Dambang area, the farmer they are younger than the Suan Tang and Hua Khao cluster group. And also when we measure for the risk attitude, farmer in the Dambang area, they are quite like a risk lover compared to those 2 areas. And also when we observe about the adoption rate of the rice planting machinery is also high in Dambang district. We also try to study the adoption rate of farm application, because in Thailand we have so many farm application, they invest a lot. But if we see the result that we found that the farmer, they don't know. And even they know, they still not adopt. Because they said they don't understand what is the benefit behind if they adopt. Also, this is the farm application that they adopt or not adopt. The figure is quite similar in the case of cassava. But we see in the case of cassava, they use the machine for a lot of farmers use the machine for harvesting. But for the planting machine, the adoption is quite low. And also land laser leveling. The figure is also same as rice production because of the adoption of farm application is very low here as well. Also in the pineapple. Another reason that behind the non-adopter, for example, I can give you some example here. Like when we compare the technology that developed by the government and this technology that developed by the private company, you will see. The farmer said the technology that developed by the private company is cheaper and is very easy to understand. That means the technology that if we want to introduce the smart farming technology to the farmer, it should be cheap, that farmer can pay, and also it should be easy to understand. Here, this is the class. I try to look at the rate of adoption in a different level of the adoption in paddy rice, case of cassava and pineapple. We will see that in rice, in paddy rice and cassava farm, almost farmers are in the moderate level of the adoption. The high and very high level is very small number. But on the other hand, the adoption rate in case of pineapple, they have a high adoption, especially for the use of the machine for harvesting. This is the result of the model. I cannot show all result for the econometric model because there is around 30 or 40 models. Time is limited for me, so I try to draw conclusion from the result of the model that I get it. We see that the farmer age is, if the younger farmer tend to more adoption, that is very relevant to author study, and also farmer education is a significant factor to affect the adoption. The significant factor that we found is managerial style and entrepreneurial skill. That means that the human resource is very important for the government to develop for the to upgrade the agricultural sector. We also found that the network, if farmers have more network, they will get more information and quick to adopt. And if they are more risk averse, they will not adopt. And also land ownership. This is the point that if they have they have the land, and they will more adopt, and also land to labor ratio. And in case of paddy rice and pineapple, the contract farming is a major significant for the farmer to adopt smart farming, because the company bring more transfer the knowledge to the farmer. And also the characteristic of the manager of cluster farm and the chairman of the farmer group, we found that they have a different characteristic between three areas, especially in rice production. And the other result that we get from the ProBit model, I try to group the technology. For example, the knowledge intensive technology like soil analysis, fertilizer usage based on soil analysis, compare with the precision agriculture like land laser leveling, drone, sensor, and farm application. You see the yellow the yellow highlight, you see that land to labor ratio with the knowledge intensive technology is the negative impact. It means that for the knowledge intensive technology and labor intensive technology, the small farmer tend to more adopt compared to the large farm. And also, but when you look at the precision agriculture, right?
Dr. Kanapon, you have 1 minute to finish, okay? Sorry to disturb you, but
okay.
Finish as soon as possible. 1 minute more, please.
Okay, I quite finished now. Okay, if you look at the land to labor ratio, is different from this side, and also managerial style. So other barrier affecting the adoption of smart farming is like a lack of access to agriculture technology of adoption, and the moderate adoption were more of technology, and also a high cost inappropriate of technology and a lack of proper infrastructure such as electricity. That is the problem of the high level of adoption. And the farmer with remarkable high level of adoption were willing to invest in the innovation, but on the condition that the technology not be expensive and be suited to their production process. Okay, I jump to the conclusion and recommendation. For the recommendation for the government, that they should use different model or different method to introduce technology to the farmer. For example, for the small scale farm and moderate farm, maybe they should use the process innovation like the new theory agriculture, and also use the intersectoral innovation like network and marketing. But the government need to try to encourage the private sector to participate in the program, because the private sector they can provide some technology and provide for the marketing channel for the farmer. But for the high level of the adoption, the product innovation include value-added product and precision ag should be introduced to this group, and government should invest more in infrastructure, and also technology developers should make the application and interface of equipment friendlier and more interactive for farmers, and use social network to promote the digital farm application and innovation. The government may give incentive to the farmer to invest in precision ag and to develop marketing. Moreover, the private company should also be encouraged to participate in the program. But last but not least is the upgrading of the farmer in this group. Maybe the government should try to push the farmer in this group to participate in the global value chain. I would like to thank you, Professor Dr. Ari Vibunpong, for her support, and also thank you for the funding agency from Thailand Science Research and Innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Thanapon. This is again one more excellent presentation, and it is also in line with the earlier presentation we saw, the adoption of digitalization, adoption of smart technologies, and the case studies of rice, pineapple. That this is also a topical issue, and more we face climate change and the shocks, and how this climate resilient agriculture can be built, not just in Thailand but throughout the Southeast Asian countries. We have to learn quite a bit about how the technologies are adopted, what are the driving factors behind the technology adoption, and how do we make agriculture in Southeast Asian region climate resilient agriculture. That requires the studies of this nature, and excellent set of presentations we're seeing this afternoon. For want of time, I'm going to move on. Dr. Thanapon, you observe in the question and answer session. Could you answer where the answers are coming, questions are coming there? Also, there is some chat that is popping up. So I'm going to move on to the next presentation, and if time permits, we'll come back to these questions. But the presenters, go ahead and observe your questions coming from participants. There are a lot of interest on these presentations, and but let me move on to the next presentation. That is on seeds as starting point of food system, putting the crisis COVID-19 in perspective. This will be presented by Kanokwan Chorchoi, Executive Director, the Asia and Pacific Seed Association, APSA. Can we start the presentation, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kanokwan Chorchoi, or you can call me May Chorchoi. I'm from Asia Pacific Seed Association. I'm currently Executive Director. And today I'm very pleased to be invited to speak and to share actually the study that APSA has done together with World Vegetable Center, International Seed Federation, and OECD on the impact of COVID-19 to the seed sector. And in this presentation, I just would like also to emphasize, since we are talking about a sustainable food system, I would just like to emphasize on the role of seeds as the starting point of the food system. All right, let me start the presentation. Okay, the topic today that I would like to focus is seeds as a starting point of food system, putting crisis on COVID-19 in perspective. So before I go to our content, I just would like to share with you briefly about who we are and what we are focusing in Asia Pacific Seed Association. So Asia Pacific Seed Association is actually a non-profit association or non-profit organization. We cover 29 countries in Asia Pacific region and 24 countries outside Asia Pacific region. When I say we cover, it means that we have members in these countries. So the members that we have, they are actually from seed company, or they are working in the seed business relating to the seed trading, and also some can be distributors, and also the companies that they supply the technology to the seed company as well. We also have 24 seed associations or national seed associations in Asia Pacific as our members, and also 10 government seed agency in 10 countries. And most of our members, they actually invest in R&D and also seed production and also seed processing, pretty much complete the whole process for seed production and commercialization. And so since we are focusing on seeds, so everything that we put as a priority for the association are actually related to policy for seed. And so the first one that we forgot is intellectual property rights, biodiversity and genetic resources, phytosanitary standard and harmonization. This is very important. Later on, I will share with you why this is very important. Innovation in agriculture, we also focus on this as, we would like to make sure that there's a new technology that can cope with the climate change. And of course, very important, public and private partnership. And the way we work, these are our key stakeholders that we actually align our messages and work together to advocate our position on all the policies and also support the government and when they would like to issue the policy related to all the strategic plan that I just mentioned in the previous slide. All right, so let us go to our topic of today's presentation. So here, what you see is all food, right? And if you take a deep look and if you think how all the food come from, of course, I think now you can see the role of seeds because actually everything starts from seeds. Even you can see that the meat, you can say that, well, this is not from seed, but actually is, of course, is contained in the feeds for the livestock and also for, all the poultry that you can see on the plate you have every day from day to day. So this is why I would like to focus on the starting point of the food system, which is seeds. Okay, when we talk about the food system, this is very nice infographic provided by CIAR, CGIAR. I put the reference on my PowerPoint, so please feel free to go there. There's so many information that you can keep that, and also very good educational materials for everyone. So you can see here, these are the key drivers, actors that play lots of important roles in the food system, especially to keep the sustainability in the food system. So if you look into the pre-production, that's what we are focusing. So that's why I say that seeds is the starting point of the food system, because later on from the pre-production, of course, it's go to the farming and that's production, and then later on go to supply chain, and of course at the end is to consumption, to the consumer. Okay, there are key driving forces that can shape the future of food system. I'm not yet talking about COVID-19 impact, all right? So right here, you can see, this is already mentioned by FAO. So what are the key driving forces that can shape the future of food system? Very clear: demographic changes, population movement. We already know what is going to happen in 2050. Roughly, right, as predicted by many organizations, including FAO. Rising incomes, but widening inequity, that's of course generate into the new way of the food system. Very important, evolving consumption preferences, nutrition and health. Right now, you can see that the trend is shifted to plant-based. So that's also how we need to think also how can we provide or feed the demand of the nutrient of the nutrition consumption. Climate change, no one can ignore the fact that we are facing right now, the climate change. Another factor that will shape the better future, or we need to shape the healthy engagement between the local and other stakeholders, and localized development and strong stakeholder engagement, of course, that would shape the future food system. Rapid technological change and innovation. Now, I think everyone sees smart farming, Everyone see the AI tools that play a critical role in the food production or in the seed production as well. And so, of course, they would shape the future of the food system. And of course, this is already the key driving forces that we are facing, whether or not we will face the new challenges in terms of the pandemic or the war that we are seeing right now. But here today, I just would like to focus on COVID-19 or the pandemic. If everyone just flash back your memory in 2020, the WTO declared the COVID-19 as a pandemic on the March 11th, 2020. At that time, I think everyone could not really see the impact clearly and could not even think how should we cope with the situation. And so at that time, apps already saw this as the opportunity to actually engage with our members. So we work with World Support Center. So our first survey was done in April 2020, and then followed by another 3, 4, in total 4 surveys that we sent to our members in the seed companies to understand the impact. And then we work together with International Seed Federation and OECD to put together the policy recommendation for the government. And so today I would like to share with you the recommendation and also a report that we have done together with OECD, and OECD did publish the publication on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on global and Asian seed supply chain. I put the reference here. You can just go and check the information in the link. And so the concerns, once the pandemic was declared by WHO, we could see that, or we could think that world seed supply chain would be disrupted. And that time we had no clue, how long it would last and what would be the impact on the seed supply chain. And also we see that at that time, there are so many countries and companies start to face the issue on the seed movement. And of course, the restriction on the lockdown, the social distancing measures, many things were imposed by the government of each country. And some countries, even right now, still have lockdown in the country. Okay, so before I go to the result, I just would like to share with you the seed production and commercialization processes. So in the seed industry, of course, start from R&D or breeding, and then go to the seed production and seed processing and storage, and of course, go to the trading and commercialization. And this part, very crucial, is because the seed can be produced in one location and can be distributed for trading in another location in other country. So each stage can happen in totally different destination. Like R&D can be done in one place, seed production can be done in another place, but it's quite rare case because you need to do the trial also in the same seed production area. But of course, during the R&D at the beginning, it can start in a different country. Processing can happen in another country as well. Seed commercialization, of course, can happen in any countries that they have the demand. All right. And the framework that we need is all here that I put in the enabling policy environment, which I will just focus later after we see the issues, what are the impacts during the COVID-19 situation. Okay, here, just make it clearer for everyone. You can see that the arrows can keep moving and moving around the world. Here is not only one direction, so it can be point A to point B to point C to point D. So it's totally different. And if you can think about the impact on COVID-19, if we have an issue in seed movement on the logistic, this is how seed supply chain would be disrupted. I think now everyone should have an idea on how the impact would generate into the food system. All right, going into the result. in here, you can see that actually we asked so many questions in the survey, and we just would like to target into the key factors affecting the seed companies. Okay, so we monitor the same companies across 35 countries inside and outside Asia Pacific region, but here we focus only in the Asia Pacific region. You can see here we monitor from April 2020, May, August 2020, and again in May 2021. Very clear, the dark red show strong impact or the strong negative effect, and the lighter red is a moderate and also small negative effect. The green is the positive effect. You can see here that international seed shipment got very huge, strong negative effect starting from April, because the pandemic was declared in March 2020. In April, everyone like, well, what should we do? And so there's so many hurdles in the international seed shipments. And once we've been monitored until May 2021, you can see that everything gradually improved, but still see as the main factor among other factors, like, for example, labor shortage. We also see impact, of course, impact on the research development, but very good information that we see here is access to finance. And we see some countries also put positive effect. And that's because they got very good support from the government and the financial institutes. Next, since we see that in international seed trade got the high negative effect, we also asked the responders to share with us more also what are the key impact inside the issue of international seed trade. And you can see here that they rank fighting air, ocean, land freight as a key hurdle for them to do the international seed trade. And this is also, we got a comment also that the freight cost increased like 2 times, and it's very hard to book the freight. And so there are so many shipments stuck at the port. There were so many issues at that time that they could not clear that shipment. Still, now that we see that everything actually gradually improved, but you can see that there's so many major challenges that we still see even now today, like difficulties in preparation of seed shipment, acquiring import permits, getting custom clearance at the port of entry, seed distribution in the destination country. Okay, so since we know the answers from the seed companies, and of course, if it's already impact to the seed companies, it would generate, of course, the impact to the sustainability of the food system. And so here I found the report from the International Institute for Sustainable Development, or IISD. You can check on their website. So they put together the critical area for SDG 2, which is zero hunger. Of course, when we talk about zero hunger, we aim about the resilient food system. And here they also rank that the resilient food system value chains are assessed in relation to potential disruptions to supply linkages, trade, and agricultural production systems. And so it means that 2 reports matched. So it means that we are going into the right priority, that we need to focus on the logistic or the international seed movement. And so here, I just would like to show you the big picture of the global food supply chain. And here, if we talk about seed is, of course, at the starting point of the whole food supply chain. And besides the issue that we found during the pandemic in terms of the international seed movement, we talk about the climate change also, and there are so many factors that we need to improve. Not only the trade, right, is of course come with the innovation, and how can we make sure that we can still maintain the research and development to ensure that we can create the new improved varieties into the food supply chain. And this is how it is also another factor that very important that we need to start putting the innovative solution to the research and development part in order to get the high quality seed to feed into the food system. And so from all the organization, all our stakeholders, everyone see that if we can unlock the power of new plant breeding tools, of course, we will be able to feed the world faster because we would be able to reduce the time to get the new developed variety to feeding to the food system faster. All right, coming to the call for action, I think very clear. If you can link on the pictures that I share with you from the studying of my presentation into the impact of COVID-19 on seed sector. And now here, this is how we would like to call for action. And so in the report that OECD has published, according to the result that we have shared to OECD, there are also policy recommendations that are put in place in the report that I would encourage the government also to take a look. And so we hope to get a support on innovation in agriculture, digitalization. Right now, we see example of, for example, e-FIDO system by IPPC. For example, in Thailand, we are going to launch from the 1st of July for all the commodities, including seed. So that would help us to move the seed faster and in a better system also. Human resource development, we hope that we focus on this area more also, because been 2 years and with all the restrictions, very hard also for us to focus on human resource development during that time. But we still need to continue this part because it's very important to develop the human resource in order to understand the new technology, because we move toward digitalization and also the new innovation in agriculture. And we hope that all the policies related to seeds should be based on science data. Like, for example, if we talk about the pest risk analysis, everything should be based on the science data that whether or not seeds as a pathway, or if we do the policy on the gene editing or on the genome editing, the new plant breeding tools, we should base on the research information or science-based different. International coordination, right? Like we are having the forum in these 2 days. This is a perfect example to ensure that we exchange the practices and understand each other in order to put things together in terms of the policy to ensure that we can sustain the food system. If I can help to summarize in the bullet points, of course, at the key messages or key takeaway for everyone, it will be skilled and ethical workforce, both in public and private sectors. Logistics system, this is, of course, we need to be better in terms of the logistics system. This is beside the policy itself for the seed movement. Regulatory framework, as I already mentioned, about the importance of science-based and data-driven. Conserve the genetic resources. This part is very important, and this is how we can sustain the food system, because the genetic resources would, of course, be the starting point for the research and development. Focus on capacity enhancement for the universities in agriculture and research institutes. So I think that in order to sustain the food system, we need to equip our young generation with the right knowledge and skill to be able to have skilled workforce in the future for the agriculture sector. Putting innovation in agriculture, I already mentioned this, as the foundation of everything, we need to think about the sustainable development goals. All right, so I think that's all that I would just like to share with you as the, like a brief, or at least you have anything to think further for the policy and the impact of COVID-19. If you need more information or if you have any questions on my presentation, please feel free to contact me at may@absaseed.org. I'm so sorry that I cannot be here during the live session. But I'm sure that if you reach out to me asking all the questions relating to the report that we have, or even the questions about APSA, I'm very pleased to answer all the questions. Thank you very much. And I would just like to acknowledge all the people who contribute to the report. Of course, our APSA members, Dr. Pepin from World Vegetable Center, ISF team, OECD team, our team from APSA, and all key stakeholders who actually help putting the messages together for the policy recommendation. And yes, that's all from my presentation. So I hope at least you can get some key messages for the impact of COVID-19 and take into the consideration for sustainable food system. Thank you very much.
So we have no control until this whole thing finishes, because she recorded and sent it, and the presentation was so live. I even forgot that it is a uploaded presentation, but it was wonderful presentation. A lot of information there, well-developed presentation. But last but not least, let's quickly go to the last presentation. Gordana, you have been very patient and waiting for your turn. Thank you for waiting, and thank you for your patience. Sorry to bring you at the last, but you probably just woke up in Sweden. This presentation is about policy recommendations for climate resilient ASEAN agriculture. What do we learn from a review study? So Gordana, please take us through your review and also introduce, if you want to, your co-workers, co-authors. But Gordana is from Department of Economics, Food Economic Center, Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Uppsala, I assume, right? I've been there for a number of years ago, teaching a group of PhD students. So very nice campus. Wonderful to have you, Gordana. Please take over.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well. Good afternoon, everyone. It's not early morning here. It's 10 o'clock in Sweden. And I did not have a nice sleep. I was thinking of the first presenters, the panelists, and so on. So, and I joined the session from 8 o'clock Swedish time. I would also like to thank the chair for the nice introduction, and also to the organizers, the panelists, and the attendees for the possibility to present our research, but also to listen and learn from all of you. And it's really nice that I was last, so it's just as a bit more of possibility to follow all the previous presentations carefully. So let me tell you that this is the first study that I have done for the region. And the best way for me to learn is to start with simply with the literature review. And literature review studies are good both for sharing knowledge with researchers and practitioners, but also for sharing knowledge for evidence-based policy making. So I assume that this is a perfect match with this conference, and that is why I thought it's good that we present these results here at the conference. So thank you so much again for the possibility that I got. If you wonder how I ended up in this research, well, this is a part of a joint project and from a collaboration between SLU and Kasetsart University. And the research team, of course, included in this study is mixed. I have a colleague, she's from Vietnam at the Department of Economics at SLU. And then I have two colleagues from Kasetsart University and even one colleague from Mahidol University. So we are 5 in this study. What is the aim of the research then? First it was to explore the current scientific knowledge on policy pathways for climate resilient agriculture in the ASEAN, and then to evaluate which climate resilience positive capacities are targeted with these pathways. So in this study, we do not have anything to do with COVID, but it's very much general on policies that have been suggested by the researchers in research articles and relate to resilient agriculture in the region. Let me start first by shortly explaining why enabling climate resilient agriculture is important. Also, what do we mean by climate resilience and how do we measure resilience capacity of the agricultural sector? But also the role of the policy via the policy instruments and the policy pathways. All the other presenters today talked about some instruments and some policy pathways. So I think it's really nice to be the last one and almost to conclude what is out there in the research and in the studies. I will not say news if I say that, okay, the region is ranked 4th in terms of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture in the world after Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, and South America. And also the region is among the most vulnerable to climate change impacts. And why do we need the agriculture in the region to be resilient? Well, it's of course to secure, to provide or to enable food security, economic and ecological stability, and by that sustainable development of the region. If we go shortly to the definition of climate resilience, I would like to introduce these terms just to make you able to follow the results later. Is that climate resilience is the ability of the agricultural systems to cope and respond to harmful events, trends, and disturbances. And if we look into the capacities of climate resilience in the literature, we're going to distinguish between 4 different capacities. One is anticipation, the other one is robustness, third one is adaptability, and the fourth one is transformability. So what do we want from all these capacity dimensions? First, we want the sector to be able to anticipate and to be able to be proactive to detect different trends that can lead to critical challenges and changes. Then we want the sector to be robust in order to cope, to absorb the disturbance from the existing challenges. In this way, when we talk in this study, when we talk about challenges, these are challenges from climate change. But it could be any challenges if one is doing resilience capacity analysis. And then we need the sector to be adaptable, and the adaptability is required for enabling responses for adjustments. So to be able to adapt to the changes and to change agricultural practices over the time. This is more like a mid-term perspective, 1 to 5 years. And finally, we have transformability, and this is for long-term transformations, in transformability is needed for enabling the system to respond and to transform into something new. And finally, the importance of the government for climate resilience actions. I would simply say that the part of not only farmers and stakeholders, also governments have very important role in climate change actions, and that is mainly via policy measures, which are seen as techniques that governments use to facilitate behavioral change. And to affect a particular target group to change that behavior. And in our study, we use policy pathways as a metaphor for policy-driven actions of various policies. Like we have several policies together working toward making the sector to be resilient. So what do we need for building evidence-based policy recommendations and decisions? Well, we need a lot of data. And these data can be collected in different ways, can be databases, can be surveys, interviews with stakeholders, focus groups. And then we need models and analysis, both qualitative and quantitative approach to produce results. And then out of that, these results, we go further with policy recommendations and decisions. And to make this as fast as possible, as we did in our study, we opted to make or to conduct a literature review analysis where where researchers have used various of data and conducted different methods and analysis to come with results. And the literature review that we conducted is on research articles only. And research articles are from Asian countries published in English. And these articles appear in Scopus and Web of Science platforms. So what we did, basically, we did a two-stage analysis. We combined the scoping review and a content analysis. With the scoping review, we explored the current knowledge on policies that are mentioned in these research articles. And these policies should be mentioned for a purpose for improving climate resilience capacity. And on the other stage, when we have these like insertions discovered in the articles, then we see how these suggestions of policies can be related with different kind of policy capacity dimensions. Or the question is, which are the resilience capacity dimensions targeted by these policy recommendations? What we don't do is we do not include review of policy documents. And that means that we do not at all study the actual policies that are implemented in the region. And these policies, the purpose of that policy is to be strengthening the resilience of agricultural sector. And we also do not provide answers for the feasibility of the recommended policy pathways from the research. So basically, we identify only what are the policies that have been mentioned and for what purpose. If these are feasible, if these are good or not, we leave to the stakeholders to discuss and policymakers to think about it. So yes, after that, we call for further action, of course, analysis on policy documents and that dialogue for discussions with the stakeholders. Such literature reviews usually go with a follow-up with stakeholders check on the results. So, and we haven't done that. We intend to do that with our next visit in Thailand in October. So let's hope it will be successful too. So what are the results? After this, after the search, we got 1,125 articles. But out of these articles, 78 articles were considered appropriate for full paper review, and then only 47 articles entered the analysis. What we learned from the result is that rice production in combination with other crops is the most represented in the studies. And we also see that there is a difference how these studies are distributed across the countries. We see that Vietnam and Malaysia are leading in that perspective. We also see that livestock farming is underrepresented here. So what are the policy categories identified from this research? Well, we identified 8 policy categories. Some of them have been mentioned many times, some of them very rare. But in total, 8, I'm going to say which were these policy categories. Production support, risk management, investment support, infrastructural support, environmental and climate support, infrastructure for communication and knowledge, research and development, land use regulation, and certification. But what we see from the result is that policies on infrastructure for communication and knowledge sharing are among the most represented or appear in 36% of all cases. This is the light blue staple. And also we see that policy support for research and technology development is also very much there, the green staple, present in 29% of all the cases. So what is the rule of the support that should be provided for infrastructure for communication and knowledge sharing. So what we find in these articles is that this kind of policy support mainly targets adaptability of the sector, and that is especially via social learning, and that is especially to raise awareness and knowledge in reducing the impact of climate change in the agricultural sector. And some specific examples are like cooperative efforts for dissemination of knowledge, information sharing among all relevant stakeholders, policymakers, authorities, and so on. We also see that support for infrastructure for communication and knowledge has been suggested for the sector to transform, and that is mainly via in-depth learning. Some examples that we have discovered in the studies are like discussing on having climate field schools for farmers, learning networks to turn farmers into innovative practitioners, demonstrations of complex climate projections, national local climate science policy dialogue, and so on. So very much about building infrastructure for communication and knowledge sharing. And the purpose is about raising the capacity of adaptability and transformability. If we go to the next most represented and most suggested support is research and development. We have heard that already for both these supports already in the other presentations. So we see that this support mainly target transferability of the sector, and examples that we have found are mostly for accelerating niche innovations and experimentations, but also for strengthening the linkages among research, policy making, and practice. We have also discovered other measures that have been suggested, like risk measures and even environmental support. Risk measures have been suggested mostly for enabling the robustness of the sector. And you see the red staples, and then the environmental and climate support has been suggested for adaptability, for enabling the adaptability of the sector. Some examples for risk measures are like enabling loans for coping with floods to buffer the income. Then another example is financial support for insurance, regional food reserves for the risk measures, and some support for securing adaptation costs, for example, diversifying monoculture is for the environmental support. What we also see from the research is that if you see the adaptability and the transformability sections, then you see that most of the policy support are distributed there and discussed in that perspective. But we see very few cases for anticipation and robustness. And one may expect that, okay, if anticipation is not present, then the sector will not be able to be proactive and to detect these trends of changes. And also, if robustness is not there, then one may expect that, well, farmers will not be able to cope with the changes that come, like to survive for the next season. So what is right, what is wrong is an open discussion. There is no research that show that all the resilience capacity dimensions have to be present for the sector to continue to grow and develop. But these results are very different from sector to sector and from country to country. In this research, we focused on Asian region as such. So unfortunately, we cannot go into details for a specific sector and see the possibilities of specific sectors and the needs and the development. What we also see from the results is that in terms of policy pathways, we see that in the research papers, only 2 to 3 policy categories are recommended, and that is mostly infrastructure for communication and knowledge sharing, or research and technology development, and these two along with risk management and environmental policy support. That means that when researchers suggest what are the most relevant policy support, then the discussion leads us toward these 4. And instead of concluding, going back, I would like to raise some questions or some issues for further policy discussion. The first is, how do you relate these findings on the existing policies applied in the Asian countries? Why recommendations for other policies are underrepresented? Are these policies not existing but important for the practice, or these policies are not existing and not relevant for the practice? So this is what I wanted to ask. And also, I wanted to bring an example or 2 examples from 2 different agricultural sectors in Europe. There is one crop production in the Netherlands and egg and broiler production in Sweden. This is a project that we finished last year.
Gardana, I sorry to disturb you. You have 1 minute to finish it.
That's the final slide. The research question was to what extent Europe, the common agricultural policy provided in Europe constrain or enable resilience. And what we see, crop production in the Netherlands is safe on the robustness side, but we see these red and yellow boxes for the adaptability and transformability. And what we see for Sweden is that Sweden is very little focused on enabling robustness of the sector, but more focused to adaptability and transformability. So 2 developed countries, 2 different sectors, 2 different perspectives. That was my last slide. Thank you.
Oh, that is fantastic. Time is well managed, and thanks for all the presenters. I think we finished the presentations, and of course we took some questions along the way, and our presenters have also been answering some questions that came up in the chat. Thanks for doing that so that it saves time. Now we can open up for broader discussions if you have. This session is supposed to be from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 13 hours to 16 hours. So we have some time to discuss dig deeper into the issues that we have been talking about. But before we do that, while participants are thinking about asking questions, I would also ask our rapporteurs if they want to say anything or they want to have any clarification from the presenters on any particular notes that you are taking, just to give an opportunity to say a few words as well. Uchuk, you want to go? You have any thoughts on the presentations that were made in this session?
Hi. I think I think for me, it's on my side. It's okay. We can follow up with the question that's been recorded and also with the slide that provided earlier. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge you are all there. 3 people are taking notes and watching us. So let me go to Jiravan. Jiravan, I saw you taking notes as well. So is there anything that you want to bring in?
It's still fine for me. I have no question yet.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. How about Palakon?
No question.
Okay. So if we don't have anything from that side, any other questions? We gave little less time to the Singapore presentation. Professor Yoshihisa, you have anything that you want to add?
Thank you for chairmanship. I enjoyed this session. So something I'm thinking of is impact of COVID-19, we are talking about it. So we should distinguish short-term effects and long-term effects. You know, in the case of Singapore, short-term effect was not so significant, as I told you. But long-term effect may be more important. As I told you, government are more inclined to invest more in R&D, and they start considering more mutual relationship with Johor and Riyadh. So I'd say this is in long term, indirect effects, but very important. So I'm wondering, not only my case, other presenters, how do you distinguish short-term effects and long-term effects? Thank you.
Okay. Any one of the presenters would like to take that? It's an interesting question. Of course, long-term effect is very hard to predict, but the damage that is done are the secondary effects of the COVID-19, for example, in the markets, farmers' income going down, that may have implications for children's education spending, health spending. And in that way, of course, there will be a long-term implication of COVID-19. And we are already seeing that the change in the educational pattern, the approach to education, students staying at home and taking the classes online, that is obviously a long-term kind of effect. We don't know yet. And some education scientists are predicting that it's not going to be as optimal as it would be when students were going to class normally, socially interacting with other learners in the classroom and so on. So this is a very important and interesting question from the point of view of agriculture and food systems as well. And so more importantly, we need to be raising the questions, is in the short term, because of the labor shortage, because of input shortage or not appropriate use of input, are we destroying the farming system, for example? Are we compromising natural resource base? Are we compromising sustainable use of natural resources? These are all very important questions. Only time can tell, and also we need to, as you said, rightly distinguish the short-term, medium-term, and long-term impacts of the COVID pandemic. Let me actually come back and take one of the questions that remains unanswered. It goes to Dr. Vitsanu. Do you think there is quite a bit of subsidies for digital adoption in Thailand? If so, what kind of support the government is giving? That's coming from Sweta Sinha, who put a question there.
Okay, all right. So I actually write down, answer the question. But basically,
you did.
In my opinion, yes. I think the Thai government still provide a low level of subsidy to encourage the use and adoption of digital farm technology. So basically, right now, the Thai government rely pretty much on what we call unconditional transfer or unconditional assistance. So mainly, we use like the income guarantee or the price guarantee or something like that, and that is not encourage the adoption of digital farm technology. And so, my suggestion is it will be great in the future if the Thai government try to revisit the use of agricultural policy, try to put toward the policy that have conditional assistance, so that it can encourage the adoption of digital farm application, and also it can improve the farm productivity also. That will be my answer.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's very useful. I picked up some questions for Gardana. Gardana, the review was excellent. It is you boiled down from 1,000 to 40 or so papers to seriously consider. That means there is quite a bit of literature out there, and they all address various aspects, as you rightly said, from the production to environment and adoption and land use and so on. But what is the serious evidence that is missing from your review that the policymakers are looking for? Could you say that? I mean, you had the broad categories of the policy areas, but what is the evidence that is missing the policymakers when you want to, for example, you have nationally determined commitments, contributions that we go to Glasgow COP26 and countries say this is what we want to do in terms of mitigation and adaptation, and this is what agriculture can do. We talk about this, but then when it has to be translated into action from the perspective of climate smart agriculture, climate resilient agriculture, it's not clear to me, at least, what is the policymakers looking for. Is the literature that you reviewed, is it saying something about it? Can you expand on that a little bit? I'm asking this question on behalf of all the participants because they may be having that in mind, but please go ahead.
Yes, unfortunately, I cannot answer what politicians are looking for, but what we discovered or what we were looking for, what message researchers want to convey with the public. And I was surprised that, okay, everything is about new technology, collaboration, sharing knowledge, sensors, let's say, all these high-tech issues that are relevant. But how much time we need for these things to be applied? Can we wait for these things to be applied? Do we have finances and how these finances are transferred to the farmers? I don't have that information. And that is basically the next step of our research, to review instead available policy documents. So to go through, well, how much money have been distributed in different countries for different sectors for different reasons. So basically what we see from these regions for this research was to scan what is out there, what researchers are talking about, but I have no idea how the Asian policy look like. And I have received some other comments like, have you had a look into investments and so on? No, we haven't, but we really want to do that, and that is on the agenda as well. So thank you, Arya, for asking that question too.
Yeah.
And what I see basically is and I'm wondering also if there is support available at all. Who are the recipients of this support, and for what purpose that support has been distributed, and if that support is meant to have an effect on the climate change in short term, in mid-term, or in long term, if that support is going to enable the sector to detect these trends, to make these stations, to see how changes will and what will happen in the next 50 years. It's really difficult to detect climate change changes, and what's going to happen next spring is really difficult to know. So if such infrastructure is existing or not, I don't know.
Okay. No, I'm personally interested in what the research, the review that you did, because we are trying to help the countries to think through how they can actually take the commitments that they are making. Some are making they will become net zero by 2030, some are 2040, some are 2050, and so on. But how do we reach there? Are they just simply throwing some numbers at us? Or they have some real strategy? And from the food system perspective, we had food system conference, summit last year. This morning we heard from Dr. Shengen Fan when he gave the open keynote address, and he talked about how the food system summit, the areas of intervention overlap with the climate change and resilience building nature of policies. And that's where the interface is between the COP26 type of thing. And come COP27, What are we going to go tell them, in between what we did? And how is it connected to the food systems interventions? And that's the driving thing. But in your review also, did you find any multidisciplinary type of research? Because that's what people are calling for. It is not, sitting down on the farm and figuring it out. It has to be multidisciplinary, bringing various sectors together. In a landscape approach, for example, it's not just water, it's not just agriculture production, land use, or it's forestry, right? Or it is sustainable use of energy. So there needs to be a multidisciplinary type of approach. And people sitting in this panel now and the presenters, we are the ones to do that. How are we going to do that? That's my kind of worry. Maybe Dr. Vitsanu, you can also help us. You have been doing this research for a long time.
I can simply add on multidisciplinary. It rather transdisciplinary, including various stakeholders. And in most of the studies, they start with kind of secondary data, do the analysis, and then they organize even other focus groups or so, discussions with policymakers, include various stakeholders to somehow to secure that their results are relevant. And at the end, this is always more knowledge, better communication, more technology, and not more than that. So I was okay, are all these kind of support there, or all this other kind of support is not needed?
Okay, wonderful. I'm tempted to ask Dr. Vitsanu, because I have seen his papers. Dr. Vitsanu, we all do modeling and predict what will happen, but what exactly we need to do in terms of bringing various sectors together to talk about climate smart agriculture?
Yeah, I think this is very, very, very important that we have to do some kind of quantification, right, to project the impact of climate change. Basically, I think we have to show the policymaker that the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action. And especially, right, it's kind of hard, as the speaker said, right, it's kind of very difficult to quantify the uncertainty in the future of climate change. But we have to do something to quantify and change the physical impact to monetary impact, so that it can be easy, right, for politicians to understand. And if they believe, right, and know the value of the money, they can compare, right, the budget, whether it's useful to invest or not. And one thing that I think is very the main obstacle for climate change is that people think the impact of climate change is very long-term, not the short-term impact, right? And in terms of politics, right, you all know that policy maker or politician, they come just only in a short time period, 2 years, right, or at most 4 years. And some of the mitigation or adaptation strategies, right, it takes more than 4 years. And think about if you try to develop the new rice cultivar or something like that, it takes more than 5 years or at most 10 years. And this budget usually, for example, in Thailand, we have a shortage, very short, of this kind of research funding. So we need to push more attention, right, to the policymaker that we have to keep, right, the long-term impact also, not just focus on just only the short-term impact and get the popularity more, right? Something like that. That will not useful for the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Vitsanu. I want to turn my attention a little bit to the excellent presentation on the climate smart agricultural practices adoption. Dr. Thanapon and your team presented nicely the results. How this adoption of these technologies are connected to Thai climate policy? Is there any connection between there is the Thai policy in the climate area strategy and those policies and strategies driving the technology that you talked about? Could you give us this connection?
I think it's connected to the climate policy because in the area of Suphanburi province, they have the introduction program from the GIZ. They also try to encourage farmer not to burn rice at paddy rice field. And also in the pineapple production, they also try to encourage farmer not to burn the pineapple field. Anyway,
so there is that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, you first.
No, I was saying there is this direct connection you can make between the technologies that we are promoting for farmers to adopt for climate resiliency back to this national adaptation plans and the climate strategy that we have at the larger level.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, so yeah, that's very useful to know. I was going to ask Dr. Ayurvade, you talked about the livestock value chains, very interesting, very detailed analysis you did. Are you aware of other supply chains or other value chains that are being affected similarly? Did you do the literature search looking at what are the key other supply chains and value chains that are being similarly affected? Not in Thailand or in other countries. What is emerging in that literature?
I think in the livestock value chain later than swine and dairy that I study, I think it's also have the impact also from the study and review literature. We found that in many countries has also like this kind of impact. The limit on transportations, the restrictions, the measure of the quarantine, something like that affect to the flow of the logistic or the input and reduce the access to the market on the processing process and to the transport of the product to sell in each channels. This impact, I think, is effect to the other value chains and the increase in the cost of each livestock product and impact to the price on the market, and maybe in some product it impact to the demand because of the price increase and it's lower the demand size, and also the purchasing power of consumer from these the situations reduce and public procurement reduce is might lead to the lower demand, and this effect is not much quantified yet. But if we have an opportunity to study more, I think it is really important to learn and to use the data here to recommend it to the policymaker.
Wonderful. What we are talking about in this session should be very important because I see 162 participants online listening to us, and it's a serious discussion that you are having. So thank you so much for all this thinking process and the issues that you brought through this session, and all the presentations were good. But I want to go back to the Singapore presentation. Professor, do you see any investment rushing into Singapore or any major cities like that because of the lack of transportation during COVID? Lockdown stops the supply chains. Even now we are facing the log jam in Shanghai and Beijing, because of this lockdown there. COVID is having a huge effect on the urban cities. Is there any significant investment that you are seeing in either in Japan or in Singapore case, for example, that people can see this as an opportunity to build a vertical farming system? You talked about R&D, but does R&D is followed by investment in actual urban and vertical agriculture? What are we seeing there?
Thank you for your question. I'm not Singaporean, so my view may be not very same as average Singaporean, but still, let me give you my opinion. So I'd say, so Shijori was a great thing. So today we have so many frozen foods and, for example, meat or some dairy product we can keep in the refrigerator. So as far as energy is okay. So in the case of Singapore, they have plenty of energy stock. I mean petrol. So in that sense, if we talk about food shortage, it is not always a matter of absolute volume, but how to keep may be more critical. So as far as we have energy, we can keep. But the problem is perishable foods, vegetables and eggs, like that. So we are very conscious about whether we can have fresh perishable foods. So in that sense, because they had shijori, because they have shijori, they can transport with each other even before COVID-19 pandemic. So they have some experience. They have know-how how to transport perishable foods. So this is same as COVID-19 in Japan too. Perishable foods because
Go ahead. Tell us about Japan. What is happening in Japan?
So in the case of Japan, perishable foods also comes from neighboring area. Close to Tokyo, close to Osaka, we have some agricultural area. So in that sense, Japan also rely on food import, but there is no food shortage in 2020 or in 2021. So as far as energy is okay, we can keep. Only problem is perishable foods. So as far as we have some system for perishable foods, it was okay. So this may be a lesson from Singapore case.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that intervention. We will explore more on how Singapore can benefit from more cooperation with Indonesia and Malaysia, and even other countries in the region where they can benefit from, even Thailand and other countries that can supply them. And there could be only even vertical farming there is some limitations, right? You can't go beyond because of the area restriction and so on. But how they manage and balance between growing whatever they want to grow within Singapore in a cost-effective manner, and how they import the commodities from the rest of the regional countries is something to watch as well. So that's very useful. Any other issues that the presenters would like to bring up? We have few minutes left. I'm opening it up for any other issues that the panelists, the presenters would like to just share with us. Go ahead, please. Just come in.
Maybe let me give you some limitation of shijori too. In the case of Singapore, they have a large population of Chinese. So they love pork products. But in Malaysia, they don't like, right? So yeah, so maybe of course in Singapore they have large Muslim people. So yeah, this is a little bit different factor from Japan. In the case of Japan, we don't need to consider such cultural problem. Maybe this can be a next challenge, how to develop Shizori. Yeah.
Okay. That's a useful intervention. Yeah. Now, naturally, cultural factors and religious factors are going to play the role in terms of the choice of food and how we can manage the food system accordingly. One more round of any other comments from any other presenters? Last minute comment. Otherwise, let me take this opportunity to thank all of you spending last 3 hours in presenting and debating and discussing very key issues that are really relevant for moving forward the food system in the Southeast Asia region, particularly in the context of the shocks and adoption of technologies and what is happening in the new areas of building resilience. And this region is vulnerable for climate shocks, and also you already see the impact of climate change in this region, and how do we handle it. So it's a very fine set of papers that you presented. I appreciate all the presenters coming and presenting it in a very nice manner, all the excellent papers. With that, let me turn this session back to Professor Matthew, if he is listening there. Professor Matthew, would you like to come in and close this session if you are there?
Yes, thank you so very much. And indeed, I do want to thank this entire panel heartily. I think in my mind, it was a very lively session. We were presented with in-depth research, strong analysis, prudent recommendations regarding building resiliences. So I think you achieved the goal of this session. And sir, you are a very artful chairman. It was a lovely session.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.